Good evening, folks. This is the Von Akron Show. It's number 18. This is going to be a mini show, I think. But I saw a story today, and more importantly, the reactions to it that I just really wanted to talk about as I was fired up. And I'm joined by my good friend Josh. He runs the Veterans for Libertarianism page. And he kind of, I saw the story earlier, but just some of the reactions he got. Brought it to the fore. So welcome, Josh.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, no problem. So this is kind of impromptu, but okay. So here's the story. Let's get down to brass tacks here. There was a Family Dollar security guard who was killed in Michigan after denying entry to a woman without a mask. So apparently, this happened in Flint, or at least that's the date line on here. And it says Charmel Teague arrived at the Family Dollar across from Fifth Avenue from the University of Michigan Flint's William S. White building. Most of you don't have any clue what that means. But anyway, on Friday afternoon, she was wearing a protective mask. Her daughter was not. Now, I'm not going to read this whole story because it's pretty long. But her daughter, when we say her daughter, she wasn't like 5 or 6. She was 21 years old.
Right. That's initially I thought we were talking about an infant or a little child, but yeah, it's
right.
An adult.
So apparently the security guard Calvin Mullern, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, and I apologize, denied the daughter entry, and then denied Teague's service. An altercation erupted, and left the 43-year-old father dead with a gunshot wound to the head. Police were hunting for the suspects, et cetera, et cetera. I guess it was about 20 minutes later. Some folks showed up and they shot him. Now, it looks to me, just from reading through the story, seeing some photos and things like that, there's really not any sort of racial angle to this story, first of all. I mean, it looks like everybody involved was African American. But the headline, at least the one that you shared and that I shared earlier as well, Josh, was that the person felt disrespected.
Sure.
And that's why they came back and did this. So, first of all, look, that's no reason. I mean, if everybody walked away from the situation without injury, there's no reason to come back and kill somebody.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you could almost try to justify it if the guy, punched his wife in the face and she went back and got her husband, and the husband came back, angrily and started an altercation. But by all indications of the articles that I've read, there was no such thing. That the guy is a private security guard. It wasn't a police officer. It was a private security guard hired by the company to enforce certain rules that the company apparently agrees with. And the guy asked her, an adult woman, to put on a mask to come into the building. And when she refused, he told the cashier, hey, she's not supposed to be here and she needs to leave, and don't serve her. So then they went and got their family members, who came back, which to me is premeditated murder. It wasn't a spur of the moment. It wasn't hot tempers where people were in an altercation. They left. They went and got more people who obviously came armed, and they shot the guy right in his face.
So let's rewind.
No justification whatsoever. Let's just make that absolutely clear.
I'm on the same page, absolutely too. So let's rewind that a little bit, though. I mean, in a free society, a free market, a liberal society, right? I mean, that makes sense. Like, you've got a private business, who says these are the rules for entering our establishment. Now, whether those were edicts from above or not, it doesn't really matter. These are the rules the private business was trying to enforce.
Right. To protect their employees and their customers.
I mean, that's really the dream world that many libertarians and our, ANCAPs and everybody espouses to live by.
I mean, any ANCAP, that's the be all end all of the world. Whatever the business says goes, and they're a private company. They should be able to discriminate against anybody they want. They should be able to turn away gays for making wedding cakes. They should be able to tell black people they can't come into the store, because that's what freedom's all about. So,
and then to give them a little credit, I mean, a little, until we get into our the next part of this.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that, okay, so let's say there was a business that didn't want to have gays coming in, they didn't want to make their wedding cakes, or they didn't want to have black people in their store. I mean, those are horrible, but especially in this day and age with social media and the way that we can get information out, I personally would never shop there. I think most decent people would never go there again. They'd never patronize them. They would go out of business. That's the market working, right?
Yeah, the market will correct, and they'll run themselves out of business if they continue to be idiots.
And so this is really a perfect free market response to a situation, as far as I'm concerned. And then these people turn around and
Uh-oh. I think I lost you. Shit.
okay, you're still there, George.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't have the best connection here, and I've only got one
It said
port in my house.
it said I lost connection too.
Okay, all right.
At any rate, sorry for the interruption, folks.
Oh, that's okay.
So yeah, a perfect libertarian, response to a situation, and then a horrible, horrible violation of somebody else's rights based on, at the very least, disrespecting somebody, right?
In a perfect libertarian world, even if there wasn't a virus, a business should be able to tell people, you have to wear a mask to come into our business.
Sure.
If they wanted to, right? Even if the governor hadn't said so, it's no shoes, no shirt, no service, no mask. Fine. That's the business's rules. If you don't like it, don't support that business. Just like if the business had a rule that said no gay wedding cakes, you cannot support that business if you don't want to.
Oh, I agree. And I mean, let's take it to the other thing that, the COVID-19 pandemic is nothing worse than the flu, right? So, that's not true. But
Right.
if it were during a flu pandemic, could we not, a business could not serve people who aren't wearing a mask? I mean, it makes sense. That seems like, a personal choice, personal responsibility. We're all for that. Yay, etc. So I want to get into this response here. And look, I'm not going to say this is typical of people who call themselves libertarian, but unfortunately, I can't say it's completely atypical. So you posted something today that I think, well, you set it up. I think it was a response on your page, Veterans for Libertarianism.
Yeah, so I posted this story, and all I said was, WTF, what the fuck? Just because I was flabbergasted that somebody would murder a person over being asked to wear a mask. I couldn't believe that was a news story that was out, and of course it was horrible. And the response I got was not something I expected. Now, of course, there were a number of people that said this is terrible, what you would expect from a normal human being as a response. But there were an awful lot of people who had responses like, I guess that's what he gets for telling people how to live their lives, or and I was just almost dumbfounded that this was what people were saying. But it does sort of fit a pattern that a lot of so-called, left libertarians have been recognizing that there are a couple different kinds of libertarians. There's the don't tread on me libertarian, who is only concerned about their own rights. And then there's the don't tread on anybody libertarian, who
Yes.
wants everyone to have equal rights, everyone to be protected. All people's rights are equally important, whether they're born here, they're not born here, they're a minority, they're a majority, whatever. And this seems to fit into the don't tread on me type, that if anyone tells me to do anything, they have somehow violated my rights, even though a number of those same people would probably agree that in other circumstances, a business should be able to discriminate or say anything they want.
Yeah. And what a crazy idea, because the whole counter argument, I guess, that a lot of folks have been reacting to for the last 10 years or so is that a lot on the sort of far progressive reactive left have been saying that words can be violence. They can be considered violence. Now, that strain has always existed amongst some fringe libertarians as well. But, words aren't violence. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me, is the old saying. I mean, look, I'm looking at the very first post you put up here, and somebody named Patrick, and we don't know the last name, we don't want to know it, says the moral of the story: mind your own business. Yeah, and it's this dude's a security guard.
His business. He's a security guard. He's hired to guard a business. He's literally minding his business. So, yeah,
and then you, like you said, shouldn't have told him how to live his life. I mean,
and it wasn't even, for one, it wasn't even that he told him how to live his life. The person who murdered this man was not even involved. He was the woman's husband and son, who came back to the store and murdered the guy. But their initial response is to side with the murderer because they support people who refuse to wear masks based on, it's my freedom and I shouldn't have to be, I'm not going to listen to you because you told me to wear a mask, which, hey, that is everyone's right, I suppose. If you don't want to wear a mask, you don't
go elsewhere.
Fine. Yeah. Or you go to a different business. If the business says you have to, that's fine. But the idea that that's somehow infringing on my rights to have a private business tell me I can't do something in their business is just antithetical to my idea of what libertarianism is.
Yeah, and it just kind of blows my mind that that's the first, the first thought that jumps out of somebody's head is to go to that side because, well, people are, I think we just, and by we, I mean sort of the libertarian movement, right? I think we attract a bunch of really grumpy contrarians.
Yeah.
Who are probably picked on relentlessly in school. Like, look, I was like, don't get me, well, not later, but anyway, we won't get into that. But yeah, like people who have been like, I guess if you've just like really had your ass kicked and you've really had yourself beat down, when you were in like middle school, you'll either excel and become a scientist or a doctor or something. B, you'll become, a police officer for all the wrong reasons, or C, you'll become a libertarian, in which case you'll find plenty of company of just like cranky contrarians that just, and it's been happening. So this whole thing, this whole COVID-19 thing has shed so much light on this to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been sad to me. And I see a split even amongst people that I like and I've enjoyed their input, and like I felt camaraderie with them and ideas, and like there's been a complete split now. We're getting even more marginalized than we were before.
Yeah, there's the a lot of people, these people think of themselves as skeptics, but just automatically disagreeing with whatever you're told doesn't make you a skeptic. You have to think about something, evaluate it, assess whatever facts are in there, and then say, okay, I don't necessarily believe this because I don't have all the facts, or I don't agree with what has been here. But to immediately dismiss anything because it's the mainstream media or whatever, that doesn't make you a skeptic. That just makes you a contrarian for no absolute reason. And you can even see in some of those responses, that the person clearly didn't even read the article before they came and defended the murderer. Well, the one guy said, oh, there was probably something more to this story. Okay.
And
then somebody else posted, hey, I work in retail, and my manager, somebody spit in his face because my manager asked them to wear a mask. Well, there was probably more to that story too. And it's like, dude, you have zero facts, zero evidence. You didn't even read the article, but you're immediately siding with the murderer and the guy who spit in somebody's face just because you agree with not wearing masks or whatever it is. That doesn't make you a skeptic. It just makes you a contrarian, just to immediately, nope, don't believe it. There must be something more to this. I just don't get that. And there's plenty of them. There's plenty of people like that out there.
And there are, and it's, like, I'm glad you used that word skeptic, because that's, I've studied skepticism, and I've considered myself a skeptic pretty much my whole life, even when I had other philosophies. Like when I was in middle school, high school, I was a skeptic. I was also contrarian. I was a real dick. I think I've tried to move beyond that, but just being, the word skeptic, like you said, it doesn't mean that, like, just because something's said, it's not true because of the source. I mean, that's a logical fallacy.
Right.
And there's so much of that right now. And again, I'm so disheartened by how much of it I've seen, within our movement. I think last time we talked was before Justin Amash had declared his candidacy.
Yeah. Sure.
And, we can talk about that a little bit too, because like I said, I'm not going to make this too long, but like I was finding a really hard time for me personally not getting excited about that.
Yeah.
And then I saw all the reaction from the party hardliners, right?
Yeah.
Some of them were cool about it. Some of them were like totally shitting on it. But look, I mean, interesting enough, you spent some time in the party. I did too. I'm not involved anymore. But, you've got some fixtures there who are very big fish in a very, very, very small pond. And I think that they don't want to let go of that. But, in my opinion, Amash is, a great thing.
I agree. And like you, I'm trying to temper it. And at least on my page, I'm trying to be somewhat objective. I'm not endorsing anybody just yet, because there
Sure.
are some legitimate criticisms or concerns that I have with Justin Amash.
Oh, certainly.
His stance on abortion and immigration are a particular concern.
And I don't know that he's clarified those yet. I mean, he's had a record, but
right. He has had a record of saying some things like, there was a Reason article or a Reason interview, but it was from like 2013, where he said, I would like to push back the restriction on abortion to as close to conception as possible, which in my opinion is a gross violation of women's rights. But that was 2013. He's had a lot of time and to change, or maybe he hasn't. I don't know, but I would like to hear what he has to say about that. And that kind of leads onto a tangent of, there are a lot of people in our movement, or at least in the libertarian movement, that are not willing to accept that anybody else can change. Well, he said this back then. Well, okay, I wasn't always a libertarian. I considered myself a conservative Republican until 2008, when I saw Ron Paul for the first time, and I immediately started reading about him, and it was like, something clicked. Oh shit, I'm a libertarian. Like, what have I been thinking all this time? And I mean, it was almost like a light switch that quick that I realized how wrong my thinking had been. So I sympathize with people who, like Lincoln Chafee or like Justin Amash, who claim that they have changed, that they have seen the light, they've thought about
people grow, people change.
Yeah, they do. And so when a person says that they have changed their opinion or they've rethought something, I'm willing to take them at their word, if they're willing to at least explain it to me and be honest. So I would like to see what he has to say. I'm not going to judge him and throw him out just yet, but I do want to hear his opinions on those things.
Yeah. With that said, though, I mean, as far as profile goes, he's the highest profile. And sure. even if those two things were still issues, he is just light years beyond the other two sort of Raby
on
candidates.
everything else. He's better.
Weirdo, old, senile candidates we have. Yeah. I mean, he's 40 years old.
Right.
He's a Palestinian American. He's actually talked about every vote he's ever made, which is one of the things I find most impressive, because I saw that posted often after votes, and he would explain himself, which is awesome.
Yeah. Now, in Congress, they have they've come up with a really good idea to name a bill something really sympathetic. So whenever anybody votes against it, they sound like an absolute monster. Justin Amash voted against the Violence Against Women Act,
right.
Which, I mean, nobody but a complete monster would vote against that, except some people actually read the bill and realize that most of what's in the bill is already illegal, or they threw a whole bunch of extra crap into the bill that shouldn't be there. So he, as you said, he goes and actually explains every vote that he takes, especially the controversial ones. And I really respect that, to say, look, I know this makes me look terrible, but here's why I voted against this thing. You can still disagree with me, and that's okay, but at least he explained it. And I absolutely have to respect that.
Absolutely. But with that said, I mean, you've got, a certain core already of the libertarians that don't like the guy for whatever reason. They think he's another carpetbagger coming in from the Republican Party. I get that. Look, I'm not shitting on your ideas. Mm-hmm. I understand where you're coming from, but I'm not much of a feelings guy. I'm more of a facts guy. And then you've also got, the media is going to pounce all over these votes, and they're not going to read his statements about them. Why did you vote against the throwing orphans into a meat grinder act of, 2010? I mean, it sounds terrible, but yeah, there was, tons of other stuff in there too. So,
but unlike the two other candidates, he could actually intelligently explain why he voted against those things. And it wouldn't leave you scratching your head like, wait, what did I just hear? Was that even English? So there's that in his favor. He can speak.
He's coherent.
Yeah.
He was an attorney, a lawyer, I believe, before he entered Congress. He's got support in a fairly mixed district too. So, I mean, he appeals to a lot of people. Of course. So two things. I mean, he's got to get into the debates to have any kind of shot.
Of course.
And look, a third party, I was thinking myself, even like, I think last time we talked, I might just cross lines and just vote strategically instead of by principle. And that would be the first time I've done that in my life. Mm-hmm. But that was before he entered the race. Now, will libertarians actually select him as the presidential candidate? Probably, but not without a fight and giving him a little bit of humility. That's usually the way it works. Sure. But at any rate, a lot of folks right now, reasonable folks who might be able to be appealed to, think that, this is definitely not the year to throw away your vote for a third party. I mean, we both heard this time and time again. It gets old.
Yeah, sure.
I get where they're coming from, because I was like, if it wasn't anybody serious, I would have kind of thought the same thing. Mm-hmm. But then, like I've said before, I mean, I got this one dum-dum who's the president now, and then I was like, okay, maybe they'll give me somebody else who might be a little better. And then they gave me another idiot. And I'm like, and like, they're not like, shit. Biden's older than Trump.
Yeah.
You have just tons of footage of him smelling people's hair, which is super creepy.
There's no dearth of evidence that he's a total creep.
He's
not
a creep. Yeah, and he's senile. He talks about corn pop and the hair in his legs. It's just a weird
hair. Yeah.
It's like, guys, like with Trump's approval rating, I mean, because even Trump's people admit that they can't win based on their base. I mean, it has to be like they'd have to have people stay home. Mm-hmm. So the Democrats are like, okay, cool. Let's support somebody who excites nobody and is really weird and creepy.
Yeah.
And there's no enthusiasm for him. the only thing that Biden has going for him, and I'm not going to discount this, but the only thing he has going for him is that he's not Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about the best thing I can say about him. And somebody was talking today that I was reading about, that when Hillary Clinton was running, a lot of her supporters didn't actually support Hillary Clinton. They supported what they thought they wanted Hillary Clinton to be. You could, it was Justin Coates, I think, another libertarian, who said that. And it's a really great point, that if you actually look at Biden's record for like the last 40 years he's been in government, he's been terrible on so many things that the left prizes, and which they should be important to them. And his record really is not good. The best thing anybody can say about him is that he was Barack Obama's vice president. And that wasn't great either. He was the deporter in chief. He dropped an untold number of drone strikes on weddings at hospitals, and Biden was right there the whole time, presumably cheerleading it on.
Even engineered the drug war, unfair sentencing between like cocaine and crack and things like that. I mean,
there's probably hardly been, aside from one very major policy, there's hardly been any policy worse for minorities than the war on drugs. And Joe Biden was one of the absolute architects of the war on drugs, and he supported it, and presumably still does, other than now he wants to make weed legal, I guess. But aside from that, he's still a supporter of that.
Well, maybe he'll round out his dream team by choosing Kamala Harris or something as his VP, right?
Great cop,
the former prostitute, but she is a black woman,
right?
But it's funny you say that about Joe Biden, kind of being what people want him to be, because for the last I think my entire voting adult life, I mean, that's really what elections boil down to. So, and it's gotten worse, and I digress. I mean, so let's start with recent history. Obama spoke in such broad and vague and hopeful terms. It was such an emotion. He was really one of the first presidents who just really pulled at people's emotional heartstrings. Other presidents tried. He was an expert at it.
Yeah.
He was so freaking good at it.
He was a great speaker, and he made people feel something. And presumably a lot of people who didn't see themselves represented in government really felt something when he spoke, which is clearly understandable.
Yeah. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt, I guess. Let's say that Obama, wasn't being diabolical and satanic as some on the very far fringes of several places would claim. I don't. But let's just say he even believed what he was talking about, because I remember when I saw him speak at the Democratic convention, I think 2 years before he was nominated as president. I'm like, that dude's going somewhere, because he's obviously a very good speaker.
Yeah.
But then he got into the office and he wasn't really able to achieve much. And then eventually he ended up doing a bunch of horrible shit.
Yeah.
And his supporters, though, still a good deal of them still supported him, because he was something soft and malleable that whatever they thought, they were able to project on it. And they believed that what they believed was what he believed. So let's fast forward to Trump. Trump doesn't even take that sort of nuanced approach. He just says everything. He takes every possible position.
Yeah, that's true.
So that he can, in the right light, he can be a mirror to whatever it is that you believe. So you've got like Likud, like hardcore Zionist Israelis supporting him.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got white nationalist anti-Semites supporting him.
Yeah, how does that work?
And you've got just diametrically opposed forces supporting this guy because he said every position, and they pick up on the one thing that he said that they agree with.
Yeah. And
they go for it. So I think
even after he contradicts them later,
it doesn't matter. They don't hear that.
Here's what he said, and I'm going to find a way to prove that it was true. And then 2 days later, he says, "No, I didn't fucking mean that. What are you talking about?" And they just, nope. Here's what he said. Here's what he really means. It's got to be exhausting. It really has to be exhausting trying to support like that.
Oh, it's got to be exhausting trying to support him. I don't think he's being exhausted because it's just a stream of consciousness coming out of
No,
his
that's
head.
just who he is.
And he's really good at it.
been.
I think he's naturally really good at it. I'm of the opinion that this is not an organized method or a strategy. I think it's just who he is. He's like, my crazy uncle sending me like chain emails, and it just works.
He's just like the embodiment of a chain email that you got from your dad or your uncle, and just, oh Jesus, Dad, and just deleted it, and then you see it on the pulpit on TV. It's like, oh, come on. But to jump back for a second, something we were talking about. So I campaigned or helped campaign for Gary Johnson in 2012 and 2016.
Yes.
And we were talking about people putting their own beliefs onto a candidate so that they can better support them. A number of people, we went to a gay marriage rally in support of Gary Johnson to try and find people of like mind to let them know, hey, Gary Johnson's been a supporter of gay marriage long before anybody you know of supported it. And, we would talk to people and they would agree with us generally. And we would get on the subject of the drug war, and a number of people, and this wasn't just a one-off, told me that, well, I know that Obama secretly wants to legalize weed. He's just waiting until his second term. He can't do it now because he's politically vulnerable, but in his second term, he's going to legalize weed. Now, and that's exactly what we talked about. They wanted to believe that. There was absolutely zero evidence of that being true. And in fact, once he got reelected, he shut down more legal dispensaries than George W. Bush did. But it was just another example of a person taking a candidate that they already like and impressing their own views upon them to make themselves feel better about voting for somebody who clearly violates the things that they actually care about. But I digress, and I just wanted to get that. Yeah, it reminded me exactly of that perfect example.
But Obama at least had the facade of sort of caring about these things. I'm scared to imagine what things, some folks that support 45 really think, once the gloves are off in the second term, he'll actually do. But
I don't even know what they're looking forward to, because I haven't heard any of that craziness somehow. The things, wait till and then he'll really get going.
There is the QAnon whole thing. So, and that's a whole nother universe. I don't even want to get into.
Separate podcast to go for that shit.
But and I want to preface it prologue by saying I have a lot of friends that do support President Trump.
Yeah.
And these are good people and they have their heart in the right place, and I like them. And I'm not saying you guys are evil.
Friends.
I'm not a dehumanizing kind of guy. It's you have your opinion. I don't agree with it. At this point, we usually don't discuss it. But if you want to, please feel free to do it in person.
Yeah.
But kind of like where I was going with all this is that with politics these days and successful candidates sort of being that mirror or that, that amorphous cloud that whatever their hopes and dreams are, they can just project it onto them. And honestly, it doesn't even matter if those things get done or not, as long as that is a symbol.
Yeah, no, he said it, so it'll happen.
Much like the wall is a symbol for something, for something that I think is fairly dark, but whatever. Yeah. It's a symbol, and symbols today, which just blows my mind because we have so much information at our fingertips, and you'd think it would be the opposite, but it seems like the more information we have, and a lot of it is bullshit, don't get me wrong, but it seems like symbols today are more important than, logic and, basic humanity. It's very tribal, etc. But really, at the end of the day, I think it still is sort of an unenlightened, if you will, self-interest. And you've got the low threshold or cost of voting and all those things that go into it. There's a bunch of stuff stacked up against somebody who is logical, sane, calm. So let's say best case scenario, Justin Amash gets the libertarian nomination. Let's say he's great and all on the two things, in particular that you and I agree on, at least, and he's good on those. Let's say he gets in the debates. Let's say he does a kick-ass, stellar performance, but without the charisma and promising ponies like Vermin Supreme, which is why I love him. By the way, he takes.
I mean, who wouldn't want a pony?
Yeah, exactly. As an aside, I read the statement from Brian Doherty at Reason's article a couple days ago. It was a statement from Vermin Supreme's campaign about Justin Amash getting into the race, and it was something to the effect of, I think that Amish people are valued members of the America that I love. Their commitment to continuity and sustainability in their communities is amazing, with barn raising, etc. And they do prove that a pony-based economy is feasible. They live it every day. I welcome any Amish person to the Libertarian Party.
That's great.
But okay, with that aside, I want to be hopeful. Like, I think it's in human nature that, I'm not a total fucking nihilist. I want things to get better. I like Amash. I really do. I think he's even better than Johnson in some ways, maybe worse in some ways. But with all of that group psychology and evolutionary psychology and just where we're at in the world stacked up against him, that's why I have to take it with a grain of salt. I have to temper it.
Yeah.
With all those things good, still, what do we have here?
We felt the same on election night in 2016. Being a campaigner for Gary Johnson, he did really well comparatively any other libertarian ever, but even comparative to his 2012 campaign, he got a lot of traction. He got, him and Bill Weld had a primetime CNN hour-long town hall. No other candidate in libertarian history had ever gotten such a thing. And so we were really excited about even 5%. 5% guarantees federal matching funds for the next candidate, which...
Boo. I'm just kidding.
And it does sound terrible, but technically matching funds are donations from taxpayers. But
right.
So, but to put that in perspective, Gary Johnson's 2016 campaign, he got $1.4 million in donations, and he got 3% of the vote. If he had made 5% of the vote, they would have qualified for something like $20 million in federal funding for the next libertarian presidential candidate. So it would be an absolute game changer for libertarians. So our best case goal was 5%, and we really thought he was going to make it because things looked really great. I mean, on the ground, all the news
they did.
Getting,
well, he got
3%, which guaranteed ballot access in a lot of states. But even then, we were really almost shocked that he didn't get the 5%.
Yeah, and with that, with Gary Johnson, he was doing so well and had so much good media exposure. And then, Amash, you're not listening, but if you were, I'd give you this advice. They're looking for anything that you say in an interview to tear you down.
Yeah.
Dear God, do not have a brain fart and an Aleppo moment.
Yeah,
because that was the beginning of the end for Gary Johnson, and that really sucked. But that's what happened.
No, and that was the perfect thing to throw against him. I can't even tell you the number of times that the only response I got was, "What is Aleppo?" You'd post some very well thought up, because Gary Johnson would write letters to the editor or opinion pieces or whatever, and I'd share those around, and you just get like 5-6 people just say, "What is Aleppo?" And they didn't bother to watch the whole clip. They didn't know what was going on. Gary had pretty terrible management, and this is not to disparage the number of people who legitimately volunteered their time and worked hard to get him elected, but he had been up for 20 something hours and had like a 5 a.m. interview on CNN and had almost no sleep. And the interviewer was talking about one thing, stopped in the middle of a sentence and says, "What would you do about Aleppo?" And just out of nowhere, and Gary Johnson was like, "What is it? What's Aleppo?"
Aleppo again?
Yeah. And but then that's where they cut the clip off. And then the rest of the clip is the guy says, "Aleppo, in Syria where they're bombing." And yeah. And Gary Johnson goes on a whole well thought out policy.
But that was on
Aleppo that was much better than Trump's, by the way. And
sure.
but that gets left out. But hopefully, if Amash does get the nomination, he will have better management too. As you said, if he's listening,
And he's
don't take
not.
every single interview you could possibly ever get back to back to back. You need to pick and choose, and maybe don't go on places where it may not do you the best. But yeah, it's promising, and as I said, I'm trying to temper my excitement. But I just totally lost my train of thought there.
Dude, it's okay. It's a lot to think about, and this has been sort of a whirlwind conversation. I'd like to tie it back into what our original subject was, not verbatim, but look, guys, if we're going to get ahead, we all need to think about, instead of no step on snick or my snick, no step on any snicks. Really,
right.
It's not just about defending your freedom, your life, your liberty. It's about defending everybody's. And I think, we can really grow if we take that stance. I wouldn't still hold this opinion at like such a low approval rating against all odds and against so much frustration if I didn't believe that was actually better for humans, for people, not just Americans. Just, I think it is a better way to live. Even with the convoluted system that we currently have, it still produced more prosperity and more people getting out of poverty than ever before. People will disagree with me about that. I get it. I've had those arguments already. I'm not here to do that, but just don't be assholes. I mean, no matter what your belief is, geez, if you're trying to convince somebody of something, just don't be a prick. And that's at the very least. I mean, at the maximum, don't kill them.
Yeah.
Because that's messed up. And then if somebody does kill somebody over something stupid that you happen to agree with, like, don't defend them. That's just,
I mean, you can
ridiculous.
Totally say, like, look, I don't think people should be forced to wear masks without defending the murder. That's a thing you can do, and it's not even hard. Or
you can do both.
You just don't have to say anything. You can say like, oh, you can have a terrible thought and not share it with everyone as well. And
oh dear God,
how terrible you truly are.
We are modern human beings. We can talk and chew gum at the same time. Right. And if you see something posted on social media or a news story or something, and you're just going to be really nasty in your response, or you're going to say something that won't have an agreeable conversation, even if you're right, just pass it by. Your life will be much better.
You can, sure. You can absolutely just say, you know what? I'll just keep this thought to myself. I think this guy is wrong, but I know for a fact that everyone else is going to think I'm wrong, and it's probably going to look terrible. So I'll just let it be. That's okay.
Well, and I will add to that too. If you're an admin on a page that is your responsibility and your baby, you really, if people are saying some nonsense on there, you should respond and defend.
No, I feel compelled
kind of what you signed up for.
Make it clear that I don't agree with certain things, and I'm very reluctant to ban people unless they're just people who show up every time and just make go Trump 2020 whatever. But if somebody has a legitimate argument to make, even if I very strongly disagree with them, I generally don't ban people. I let them go on and make fools of themselves if I can, and let a good portion of my fan base, I guess I could call it, as conceited as that sounds, do a really good job of engaging those type of people for me. So I don't necessarily have to go in every post and find the people who are assholes and tell them they're assholes. I have a very good group of people that I've kind of cultivated who I think tend to agree with me, and that type of libertarianism that I think I try to represent.
Yeah, absolutely. And, maybe we're going to end this now, but I think maybe sometime in the near future, you and I need to get on again, and we need to talk about terminology, because liberalism, classical liberalism versus libertarianism, all the connotations, the connections, et cetera, et cetera. I think that'd be an interesting conversation to have. But Josh, I appreciate you coming on tonight.
Yeah.
We were going to do this for like 15 minutes. It's been a lot longer because we just get fired up and things just
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah. No, this is great. I don't have a great outlet to talk about this type of thing.
Me neither.
So yeah, nobody else cares. Nobody wants to hear this bullshit either. Anyway,
Exactly. I mean,
party insider stuff.
We've had a few viewers. More people will listen after we're done. But this has been the show tonight, guys. Get to bed. You guys probably have to go to work tomorrow like I do. And I appreciate you guys joining, and we'll do it again soon. Josh, again, thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Nico.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks.